Good morning, Taste Buds. Did you know that about 75% of all flowering plants need to be pollinated by some sort of pollinator? Join me today for recipes that come from a plant that had to be pollinated. Today on SoFlo Taste. How fun is that? Time for SoFlo Taste again. I'm Chef Michelle Bernstein. I'm standing in the Goya kitchen at J World in Coconut Creek. What have you done to protect pollinators? Well, that may be an odd question, but it is important. A pollinator is any animal that pollinates flowers, birds, insects, and other small animals can be pollinators. And that pollination of our food plant is hugely important to all of us. Since this is a National Pollinators Week, I thought it would be fun to make some recipes with protecting pollinators in mind. So let's get buzzing. So I was reading a lot about pollinators and what we can do for them. And I grow a lot of flowers, I grow a lot of vegetables, and we're very bee friendly at our home. And I was reading that lavender, one of my favorite flowers and ingredients, happens to be really, really good for the bees. They love it and they do really well with it. So the first dish we're gonna make, it's going to be a berry crisp with lavender topping. So let's start out with a filling first. We're gonna take blackberries, and this you can change up, it's up to you, whatever berry you like, you can add in here. All right, so just mix these two berries together. And I'm gonna do this in like a larger surface area, so I go a little thinner, but more crisp, so that it's a really good crunch in every bite. So to this, let's add the juice of about a lemon, depending on the size of the lemon. Don't go too happy with it, but I would say a half to a full lemon is perfect. We'll add a little bit of sugar to this, but not too much because these berries happen to be really nice and sweet. And a little bit of cornstarch, and we use that so that when baking the crisp, all of this delicious juiciness will hold its place. And when you go to bite into the crisp, you won't find too much actual juice. You'll find a nice thick, like a marmalade coating. All right, let's get into the crisp topping. And this is where we're gonna use our lavender. We have here all-purpose flour and some oats. I'm gonna add half and half, brown sugar and white sugar. Lavender. Lavender is pretty potent. It's very soothing. And that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. It's really great in this recipe. I wouldn't overdo it though, because lavender is really potent, probably why the bees love it so much. So you can go from about a teaspoon up to about a tablespoon and a half, but I wouldn't go more than that. Cinnamon offsets the lavender beautifully. A pinch of salt to balance everything out. And let's go ahead and combine this. I'm using my gloved hands for this because there's no better way to really work the butter in to your crisp. Let's go ahead and add melted butter, of course unsalted. I've always used cold butter for crisps, but I heard lately that melted butter is even better, so I'm gonna try it out with you all today. Make sure, again, with your hands, you just really work it to make sure it's really well combined. And once it starts coming together and forming a certain, just a real solid piece, we know that we are good to go, which we are. I like to crumble it up a little bit before topping the fruit so that we make sure that we evenly spread our crisp all over the top of this. Now, crisps like to bake in high temperatures, so I would go at about a 375 to 400 degrees to bake this at home. All right, I think we have a lovely start for our extremely important and very beloved bees. Come right back for more great recipes. Before you go, here's a way to protect pollinators that you can do. Reduce or eliminate your pesticide use. Increase your green spaces. Easy, huh? Come right back for more recipes and more pollinator protector tips.
Come back to the Goya kitchen at J World, Michelle, and the food. This is SoFlo Taste.
Welcome back to SoFlo Taste. All of my recipes are available on the SoFlo Show's webpage. Just scan this quick response code. You're off to the SoFlo Show's page. You'll also see the QRC on the ingredients list throughout the show. Now back to SoFlo Taste honoring National Pollinators Week. Coffee is a great pollinator. Coffee is so important for the bees. I thought a coffee encrusted steak, and I love coffee and steak together. I make sauces all the time with coffee, but I thought that this would be really cool. So we've taken this beautiful New York strip, and of course this comes from my friends over at Delaware Chicken Farm and Seafood Market. They have every kind of cut you could ever imagine. They have everything you need for your 4th of July picnic. They have sides, salads, fresh made sausages, chicken, turkey, pork, their best ground beef from Black Angus, chicken leg quarters, everything that's great on the grill. Just go to DelawareChicken.com or call them 954-983-6831. Place an order with them or go in the store at 4191 North State Road 7. Make sure, though, you tell them I sent you, and be careful, they're closed on 4th of July to observe, of course, Independence Day. Tell them I love them, too, will you please? All right, so let's make this rub, and the rub has to go on that steak for at least a couple hours for it to really get in there, but always make sure you leave your steaks out for about an hour before you cook them to come to room temperature. We've got ground coffee, smoked paprika, ground ancho, Aleppo, my new favorite, which I'm using a lot instead of cayenne and instead of red crushed chilies. A little bit more fruity, less spicy. Ground mustard powder, like a Coleman's kind of idea. Ground ginger, ground coriander, delicious. If you don't have one of these things, just don't worry about it. The coffee is really the most important part, as is like a smoked paprika kind of idea. Some dried oregano, a little bit of brown sugar, some kosher salt, and some ground black pepper. Let's go ahead and mix all that together. Gets really beautifully dark. Sprinkle it all over the steak on both sides and just throw it in the fridge. This is the one that sat for a couple of hours, and look, it's developed this beautiful crust. Let's go ahead and cook that. I'm gonna do a combination of oil and butter. I don't put all the butter in first, I just put like 1 little tablespoon in. And obviously, I don't have to season the steak. I love crispy Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts are amazing pollinators. And so I thought it would be really cool to teach you how to fry them. I am making a mixture to drizzle over them when they come out of the oil that are 2-to-1 honey and balsamic vinegar. I'm using actually a pretty good quality balsamic. And I just am sprinkling in some salt, but we also have to season them when they come out of the oil. Let's move over to the Brussels. So I've quartered the Brussels sprouts. This steak smells so good. I can't. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I'm gonna cook shallots that have been julienne at the same time as the Brussels sprouts so that they caramelize while the Brussels sprouts caramelize. If you look inside this pot, it's a shallow fry. I don't want to bring the oil up too high in this pot because Brussels really make the oil go crazy because of the water content. And so I didn't want to make it too high up. I also have a little screen that I'm going to put over the pot because, again, the water content makes it spit all kinds of hot oil when you put them in there. So let's go ahead and fry quickly. I'm adding the shallots and a little bit of the Brussels. So this is a really clean fry. So I recommend after you make this, let the oil cool and strain it. And if you need to separate it, you can use that oil again and again. I really wouldn't throw that oil away. It would be an absolute waste. Let's go ahead and flip our steak over. And when you're making a steak like this, you really have to baste your steak. So bring the pan towards you using, obviously, if it's a heavy cast iron like this, use a towel to protect your hand. And then just spoon the fat over the steak like so. I'm gonna add another couple pieces of butter so that I have a little more fat to baste with. Let's see how our Brussels are doing. They just need it like another minute to be crispy. Now that I have a little more fat in my pan, now I really can baste. And this is a beautiful way to cook a steak. It's really the best way to cook a steak in a pan. This is interesting. If you can see the color of the fat, the butter, it has all of those beautiful spices in it. So I'm basically double adding, the flavor by basting it from those spices. It's just lovely. And this is only going to take me about 4 to 5 minutes to cook in the pan. I don't need to put this in the oven at all. You see the gorgeous caramelization that we're getting? So let's go ahead and flip and then baste the other side of the steak. All right, let's check in on our Brussels. Whenever you're frying anything like this, I highly recommend using a spider. This just needs, again, another minute I'm looking for a nice caramelization. So basting coats the whole protein in fat. And what you're doing is, it has the bottom of the pan, which is obviously hot, but then the top of the steak isn't getting any heat. So by basting it, you're basically giving the equal amount of heat from the fat, which is the best part, and you're basting and covering that steak with the fat on all sides. So it covers the sides of the steak, all the parts that it doesn't get to touch when it's just sitting in a pan. So at this point, I would take that steak out of the pan. To me, it's pretty much done. And of course, we want to let that rest for a little bit. I love a good 8 to 10 minutes of resting on the steak. So let's go ahead and take our Brussels out of the fat. Everything is really crisp and turning beautifully golden, as you can see. Make sure you have a landing pad for your Brussels or anything that you fry, which means a little sheet or even a large plate with either a paper towel or a napkin or something to blot that off. As soon as they come out, I sprinkle them with some big salt. Then we're going to go ahead and place them onto the plate. And then we're just going to do a little drizzle of the Honey-Balsamic right over the top, like so. More for dipping on the side. And let's go ahead and slice into our steak. I love serving sliced steak at the table so nobody has to work. And it also allows us to eat a little bit less because I can easily down this steak and probably a little more. Now the resting obviously allows this steak to hold in the juices rather than the juices be on the cutting board. Just beautiful. This would be my kind of meal. I'm in heaven right here. So there's more recipes in a moment, but first here's another way that you can protect pollinators. Create pollinator-friendly habitats with native flowering plants that supply nectar and nesting areas. Okay? Come right back.
Hi, I'm design expert Elena Capra. Michelle will be right back. And don't forget, stay tuned for another episode of SoFlo Home Project following SoFlo Taste.
SoFlo Taste returns right after this. Welcome back to SoFlo Taste. We're here at J World in Coconut Creek. For information about this educational destination, go to jsouthflorida.org or call 954-979-7100. Now back to the food. All right, everybody, we're going to keep on moving with our pollinators and delicious foods. I'm going to make you a gorgeous local grouper, and we're going to make a sunflower pesto. But I want to make a whole dish for you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put some heirloom grape tomatoes in the oven to roast them a little bit, and we're going to take our cobbler out. Oops, keep calling it that. I know it's a crisp, I'm sorry. It's a crisp. All right, everyone. I can smell the lavenders. It's just, you see the bubbling up over here of the fruit? That's what you're looking for. That's what the cornstarch does, and it's just delicious. All right, I'm going to slide this over here. And we are going to go ahead and, like I said, these tomatoes are tossed in just a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper. I'm going to go into a nice high oven for just a couple minutes. I'm going to start the fish and then we'll make the pesto. So, a little bit of oil, just like in that beautiful steak. A little piece of butter. Season our grouper with salt and pepper. And place them presentation side down. This is the part that is touching the skin. So always the presentation side is the other side. All right, moving on. Sunflower seeds. Sunflowers are obviously incredibly, hugely essential to bees and as pollinators. So I thought, how fun would it be to make a sunflower pesto instead of the traditional one? So what we're gonna do is, I have two ways of using the garlic. One is confit, which is very slowly cooking it in oil until it's really mushy, but no color added. So I'm going to use a little bit of confit garlic and just 1 clove of regular raw garlic. A little bit of Aleppo pepper. It's not as spicy and it's just delicious. Definitely kosher salt, very important to a good pesto. Fresh basil. But I thought, since we're making it for fish, why not add a little bit of fresh mint leaves as well to keep it on the fresher side. Our sunflower seeds, which are already roasted. I would not use the raw ones on this recipe. And I'm using obviously a lot more than I would use pine nuts. A little bit of lemon juice. This is the equivalent to 1 lemon that I'm juicing in here. Okay, let's come over here for just a minute. Remember we talked about basting the steak? Why don't we do that to our fish as well? It will cover every crack and crevice of the fish, allowing it all to cook together as one. It also keeps it a little bit juicier. All right. I'm just gonna leave that alone for a couple minutes. Let's move back over to the pesto. I would say just another couple pulses. And then we're going to add our oil. So this is a combination of olive oil and just some non-flavored oil is what I like to call it. Doesn't sound very sexy, like a grape seed or an avocado or a safflower. That should be good. Yeah. I happen to be crazy about sunflower seeds. Obviously, you have to like the taste of a sunflower seed to like this. But look at our pesto. It's just so pretty. And it definitely has little bits of the toasted and roasted sunflower. Let's taste it. And oh, and that mint. We're gonna come back and I'm gonna put all this together on a plate. The tomatoes have another minute. All I have to do is flip over the fish and cook it for maybe 1.5 minutes. So come right back for the finale of my recipe celebrating pollinators. SoFlo Taste will return right after this. Welcome back to SoFlo Taste and our pollinator show. I believe everything is pretty much ready. The tomatoes look good. Let's go get them. Yep. You see how they're just starting to burst a little bit? That's exactly what you want. Let's check on our fish. Yep, we are good to go. So the first thing I'll be doing is taking some of these gorgeous tomatoes and pesto together. So let's put a little bit of pesto down as like a little bit of a bed, and then a few tomatoes right on top. I mean, it already looks beautiful, so bright and colorful. Then let's take our grouper and place it right over the tomatoes. A little bit of pesto right over that. I think we made a lot of bees happy today. And a little more color with the tomatoes. I know I'm getting a little restaurant-y, I'm sorry. Can't help it. Ah, delicious. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I've got one more way for you to help pollinators. Get involved by joining a Pollinators Protectors support group. It's a good way to protect Mother Nature's pollen deliveries. Next week, I'll be observing the 4th of July, but not in the traditional way. I'll be giving you a menu of what may have been on the 4th of July dinner table in 1776. It's recipes from the first 4th of July celebration, maybe, next week on SoFlo Taste. Now let's begin on design expert Elena Capra. Good morning, Elena. What you got for us today on SoFlo Home Project?
Hi, Michelle. Good morning. So a big part of owning a home is knowing which improvements are worth making. Coming up on SoFlo Home Project, we get expert advice on just that as we tour a gorgeous waterfront property here in Fort Lauderdale.
Please be smart, be safe, and be vaccinated. And I'll see you next week. Now stay tuned for Elena and SoFlo Home Project. Goodbye, good health, and good taste. Don't be a crybaby.